If you feel in need of the kind of help shown in that programme, please call the Family Planning Association between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays on this London telephone number 01 636 7866. They'll put you in touch with a local contact. And a free information pack on some of the main topics raised in the series is available by sending a stamped addressed envelope 9 inches by 7 with 26p postage to The Trouble with Sex, BBC Television, London W12 8QT.
Tomorrow on BBC2, a new series of 40 minutes begins with 10 Days in Holloway, a powerful film observing life inside one of Britain's most controversial prisons.
Flashpoints in Holloway are sudden and frequent. The incidents in this film all happened over a 10-day period. Holloway's most controversial wing is horrifyingly nicknamed by the other prisoners the Muppet House. It's the psychiatric unit, C1.
The problem with these windows is that strut up there, as you push it open. That's it. That's where they tie up round there.
Yeah. These old ones? Yeah, but last night I put glass in, that one. The nurses were winding me up, one of the nurses.
10 Days in Holloway begins a new series of 40 minutes tomorrow at 9:30 on BBC2.
Well, now on 2, we join Peter Snow in Bournemouth, while Donald McCormick and Jill Neville are in the studio in London for Newsnight.
Norman Fowler lists the government's achievements on health. The National Health Service, he says, is still safe with the Tories. Good evening from the Conservative Party conference in Bournemouth, where the Social Services Secretary has attempted to allay public fears about the health service by trumpeting the government's record and promising improvements. Mr. Fowler's speech was the best received of the day. But I'll be asking him how much real extra money he's pumping in. And George Younger, the other keynote speaker of the day on defence, tells Newsnight why he believes Neil Kinnock has handed the Tories a winning issue, even though the polls do suggest the mood is turning against them.
There's now no end in sight to the bitter dispute between the print unions and Rupert Murdoch's News International. Tonight, the members of SOGAT 82 voted by more than 2-1 to reject Mr. Murdoch's latest offer to settle the 8-month-old dispute at the company's new plant at Wapping in East London. The SOGAT leader, Brenda Dean, tells Newsnight she'll try to get Mr. Murdoch back to the negotiating table, but he insists it really was his final offer.
On the eve of the mini-summit between the United States and the Soviet Union, the chief spokesman for George Shultz has resigned from the State Department in protest at reports that the Reagan administration has been issuing misleading information to the media, and a new chapter in the history of the Royal Ballet. As the autumn season opens, Joan Bakewell meets its new principal conductor, Isaiah Jackson, the first black musician to make it to the top of a British orchestra. And, of course, a roundup of today's other news at home and abroad.
There's one word that keeps cropping up incessantly at this Tory conference, and it's not a coincidence. That word is morality. And it's a reflection on how stung Conservatives have been by Neil Kinnock's claim at Blackpool last week that Labour now effectively commands the moral majority in Britain. Yesterday, Norman Tebbit and Kenneth Baker tore into the moral backbone of socialism. Norman Fowler picked up where they left off and set out today to do for health what Kenneth Baker had done for education, turning on what he called the phony morality of Labour's promises. Mr. Fowler had perhaps the most difficult job of all: how to persuade conference that the health service was safe under the government in the teeth of successive opinion polls showing the public thought otherwise. The 43 motions in the conference handbook reflected this concern. But it looked at first as if the focus of the debate, rather than the health service itself, might be Mr. Fowler's new and vocal junior minister, Mrs. Edwina Currie. Her criticism of the unhealthy diet and smoking habits of people in northern England provoked nearly as much offence here as last week's Labour conference.
I take issue with the junior minister who made the remark about the diet of we northerners. We have a major problem, and that is unemployment. Obviously, that has some effect on the health and well-being of some people. Thoughtless and patronising remarks do nothing to help our cause.
There was even a cry of resign. Councillor Scott's criticism, however, as with others, went wider than simply Mrs. Curry.
I acknowledge that this government has more than doubled the amount spent on the NHS since 1979. But, Secretary of State, it does not necessarily follow that these extra resources are being used to improve patient care. If we are to convince people we are a caring party, we must make sure that that happens. There is still too much waste and inefficiency, still too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
Madam Chairman, this is a potty. I am not. But you might have to be to say that all was well with the NHS today.
For some speakers, health service cuts, particularly in nursing power, were the fault of left-wing health authorities, both in the public perception of cuts and the reality.
Beware, my friends, you have lost your matrons, and with them the character of our hospitals. Do you wish to lose your ward sisters? And if they go, we are taking one more step towards the totally impersonal nursing service.
And then it was the turn of Mr. Fowler to deal with the criticisms and to announce his next move forward. His priority, he said, was to cut waiting lists, and he's ordered each health authority to review the position and report back to him by the end of the month. On healthcare itself, he announced specific targets for improving prevention and treatment of heart disease, cervical cancer, and more hip and eye operations. He also announced targets for more bone marrow operations for children and improved facilities for mentally handicapped children. And then, with a theatrical gesture, he told conference that in the next 3 years, over 100 major new hospital schemes would be completed.
But that is only part of the story. In England alone, we have over 380 large hospital schemes at various stages of planning, design and construction. That is a £3 billion hospital building programme. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the list of that hospital building programme. The country should know of it. You probably can't see it. I put it over so the Daily Mirror can take a photograph of it. There we are.
Having stated his own plans, he then tore into the health policies of the Labour Party and Labour's health spokesman, Michael Meacher.
And now we have the bogus pledges of Mr. Meacher, promising everything to everyone, cynically and deliberately. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not healing, that is deceiving. That is not crusading, that is exploiting. It is exploiting the sick, the old, the poor, and we will have nothing of that kind of morality.
Well, Mr. Fowler's speech may have been well received at the conference, but there are already questions being asked outside it about the claims he's made about the past and his promises for the future. Steve Bradshaw has been sounding opinion among those who actually are involved in the health service.
Bournemouth's Royal Victoria Hospital, just a few miles from the Conservative conference. Here, the staff paint a rather different picture of NHS funding from the confident claims of Norman Fowler.
On wards such as mine, it's generally nursing that we need, and skilled, a mixed skill base, of a lot more trained nurses so the learners have good backup.
According to the District General Manager, underfunding affects not just the nurses, but the whole hospital.
Well, it means that the hospital's under considerable pressure. We're having to concentrate basically on doing the basics rather than developing new services and meeting that sort of expectation. And I think it's in danger, if it goes on for long, in affecting quality. We get to the quantity, but in the end, we're very concerned with the quality of services we provide.
I have given you...
But Mr. Fowler, in his speech today, rejected such claims of underfunding. The story he told was of more resources and better services. So is his version of events correct? We asked Rudolf Klein, a leading NHS expert, to watch the speech and give us his independent assessment.
I think he told 100% truth about half the story. There's no doubt about it. The health service has improved, more people are getting treatment, more staff is employed, all that is absolutely dead right. But of course that's only one side of the equation, because the other side of the equation is there has also been an increase in demand and population which is growing older. There is an increase, of course, of what the health service can do for people. It can start replacing people bit by bit now. I mean, Mr. Fowler could be replaced, his joints, his hearts and everything else, and so could all of us. And that, of course, creates enormously expensive new demands.
Mr. Fowler says that the government is on its way to meeting these rising demands. Indeed, its record in building new hospitals is proudly displayed here in the conference hall. But are these confident claims backed up by the amount of hard cash the government has actually put into the NHS? Between 1979 and 1986, spending in real terms on the NHS rose by over 20%. The problem comes when you look at where the money went. According to the Commons Social Services Committee, 37% of this extra spending was the effect of a single pay award, the Cllr settlement of 1980. Another 36% has gone on family doctor services. That's left just 27% of the increase for hospital and community services, by far the biggest spenders.
All right.
As the cost of replacing X-ray machines and other equipment increases, that extra money has proved, according to the MPs, less than sufficient. Indeed, the committee says that over the last 5 years, the NHS has been underfunded by over £1 billion. That's why services at Bournemouth are under pressure, despite the considerable sums of money which have been saved by the government's efficiency drive.
Well, we've saved in the last 2 years about 1% a year. Last year, it had to go entirely towards the unfunded wage awards for doctors and nurses. But this has been mainly in services like contracting out of services, looking at the non-patient areas. And this is a sort of programme we're intending to continue, although there's a limit to the time you can go on without directly affecting patient care.
Bournemouth will soon have a replacement for the old Victoria. Mrs. Thatcher this week conducted an impromptu opening ceremony on the building site. It's just part of the grand scheme for the future of the NHS outlined by Mr. Fowler today. But if the debate seems set to continue over the government's record, are Mr. Fowler's targets for the future of the NHS really credible?
If you've got a health service with a very restricted budget, and the budget is very restricted, and Mr. Fowler didn't give any promise whatsoever about an increase, that if you're going to expand one part of the health service, the odds are something else will have to be held back or cut back. And I think that's the big unanswered question left by his speech.
Norman Fowler, have you actually got new money to put today's new plans into action, or are people going to have to cut back in order to provide the space for it?
No, there's no question of them having to cut back. What we have announced, both in terms of the capital building programme, the hospital building programme, and in terms of treatment, is within the existing resources, that is within the planned expansion of resources that we're having.
There's no new money as of today?
There's no new money as of today, which has been announced today, but we are planning, in any event, to increase the resources for the health service. We've taken it up, as your programme mentioned, from £7.75 billion to £18.75 billion. We've also, of course, vastly expanded the capital building programme. The capital building programme is perhaps the clearest example one can give of resources. We are planning, over the coming 3 years, over 100 major new hospital schemes. They are all in the plan, and they are going ahead with planned money for it.
But now, as we heard in that report, a clear criticism of the way that extra spending you rightly point to out of the Conservatives in the last 7 years, the extra spending seems to have gone not so much to hospitals as to family doctors and implementing the Cllr award.
Well, clearly some of it has gone both to the primary health care services, which I don't make any apology for. I mean, it is a very major part of the health service, and also for pay. 70% of the costs of the health service are pay. But it's also, obviously, also gone for increased services. We are treating in the health service something like 4.5 million more patients than in 1978-79, and I think that is the proof of the pudding.
You do obviously have this problem that there is this incessantly increasing demand, there is the increasing number of elderly, and of course there is this health inflation, the high-tech inflation that comes with the demand for this kind of equipment. But how do you react to the Common Select Committee report on social services, which said that the cumulative total of underfunding of the hospital and community services was 1,300 million in the first 5 years of government?
Well, I think they're wrong on that, and I tell you why I think they're wrong on that. What they've done is simply focus upon the amount of money that the Exchequer has provided, the Treasury has provided, the government, the taxpayer has provided. Now, that has gone up, as I've indicated, but what has also gone up is what has been generated internally from within the service itself. So, at the moment, for example, we're providing £150 million through a whole range of measures, from energy saving to competitive tendering. On the capital building side, we're providing about 130 million through the sale of surplus land. Now, all that kind of goes now into patient care itself. So it's a combination of the money that government is providing, the money that taxpayer is providing, but also the resources generated now within the service. And all credit to the service for having done that.
Michael Meacher's comment for the Labour Party tonight is that he's produced a shopping list with no promise to pay.
Well, I mean, you would expect Michael Meacher to say that. The targets that we are setting out are targets that will be achieved, and the proof that they will be achieved is that when you go back to when Michael Meacher's government left, you will see the very substantial increase in all those areas that I mentioned today, which has taken place under this government.
Now, you've been having a go at Labour's morality today, like many other ministers yesterday and today have been too, but don't you think on the question of morality and behaviour, it's about time that your junior minister, Edwina Currie, moved away? I mean, her indiscretions have been obviously causing considerable offence inside the party too.
No, I don't think that. I mean, why I've been having a go at the Labour Party and why my colleagues have been having a go at the Labour Party is...
I'm talking about Edwina Currie having a go at people on the North.
I will come to that. But why I've been doing that is because of the claim that they have some kind of monopoly of concern. As far as Edwina is concerned, it seems to me that what Edwina said about people taking care of their own health is a sensible line. It's a line which has been put forward by me. It's a line that was put forward by David Ennells. It was a line that has been presumably put forward by every health minister since 1948.
Could she have put it a bit better, do you think?
I'm not here to kind of judge on how she puts it, but I think that the line itself, that people should take care of their own health, is something that a programme like yours is quite likely to push from time to time, and you're quite likely to question me on preventive medicine. That's what it was all about.
Lord Fowler, thank you very much.
Thank you.
But now, if health was the highlight, a stream of other ministers set out their stalls on energy, transport, local government and law and order. And Vincent Hanna has discerned a pattern to it all. Vincent.
Well, Peter, a Conservative MP once invented a grace suitable for party conferences. Prevent us, O Lord, from being stodgy and hard to stir, like porridge. Make us instead more like cornflakes, ready to serve. Well, at the top table of the National Union this week, they have been serving little else but cornflakes, serving them sprinkled with a list of political luminaries whose desire to serve is only exceeded by their impatience to get on with it. Most of them aspire to the seat of ultimate service, and party conferences provide an excellent opportunity for a bit of creative queue jumping. Now, someone usually makes the one speech at a Conservative Party conference, which is generally regarded as a bid for the leadership. The funny thing this week is that almost every speech could be taken that way. Leading the rush yesterday was Kenneth Baker, who did himself no harm at all in the education debate. The audience were as enthusiastic about the performance as they seemed afterwards puzzled about the detail. But there have been others who today weren't happy to only stand and wait. The Transport Secretary, John Moore, is the new darling of the right and whispered to be Mrs. Thatcher's favourite after Norman Tebbit for the leadership succession. He presented the face of caring privatisation, a man with a mission and an air ticket to prosperity. And this was his slogan for the third term.
We want to break up the cartels. We want to abolish the monopolies. We want to lift the restrictions and let the people fly.
Another favourite of Mrs. Thatcher's, Nicholas Ridley, though not an obvious leadership contender, is one of the few around with right-wing credentials. And his pedigree showed.
Rates reform will be our top priority in the next Parliament. We are on course to have a new and fairer system of local government finance in place by 1990. That is our pledge.
However, with an election around the corner, he was careful to announce the creation of more urban development corporations to help deprived areas. a move which smacked more of the interventionist policies favoured by the left of the party. For some time, Mrs. Thatcher has tried to defuse Peter Walker, traditionally a wet, by shunting him into energy, normally an obscure department. But he got landed with both the miners' strike and Chernobyl. Walker was one of the star turns of the day. Before his speech on energy, he was confronted by a rare species, a Tory doubter on nuclear energy, whose fears had been fueled by that accident at Chernobyl.
Let me remind you that one major accident could ruin our chances in the next election, and perhaps for many, many years to come. Also, on the subject of defence, every nuclear power station is a hitting target, a coconut, for anyone using conventional methods to bomb and still give us a nuclear accident. I bid you beware of complacency.
Mr. Walker was so sensitive to her comments, he spent the first part of his speech ad-libbing this reassurance to her.
And I can only say that when it comes to safety and what happens to future generations, as the father of 5 young children, I would certainly not support any energy policy that brought a danger to their future livelihoods.
But later he became abrasive with his opponents, especially the Labour Party.
And I might say, what about the morality of it all? You say in an emotional speech, nuclear is not safe. It will bring disease and disaster to the people of this country and future generations. You pause and you say, therefore you'll have to put up with it for another 20 years. If it's not safe, they should have stopped it straight away. And of course, if it was not safe, we would stop it straight away.
Mr. Walker's speech was such that it made everyone wonder whether, if pressed, he might not be persuaded to reconstruct his ambition to serve. Another wet with the leadership claim, Douglas Hurd, had a more uncomfortable time. He had to listen to a manifestation of basic Tory instincts, which he just doesn't share.
The sooner our great party has, as part of its manifesto pledge, the reintroduction of capital punishment, the better.
In his speech, Mr. Hurd studiously made no reference to hanging, but he did have something to offer up to the representatives, an initiative to enable the victims of child abuse to forego court appearances.
We will enable live video links to be used for children to give evidence where they are alleged to have been the victims of sexual or physical abuse. You see, this will save them from the agony and distress of giving evidence in the presence of their alleged attacker.
Of course, the ambition to serve burns on. Even as I speak, Nigel Lawson and Geoffrey Howe are working on their efforts for tomorrow, and how they go down we shall, as Asquith said, have to wait and see. But in thinking about leadership, let me leave you with the words of Winston Churchill. Political ability, he said, is being able to forecast what will happen next day, next week, next month, and then being able to explain afterwards why things didn't work out that way. Back to you, Peter.
Well, the other major issue of today was on defence. And here the agenda has been set by the stand against nuclear weapons taken at last week's Labour Party conference, and by the disarray on the issue within the alliance.
Geoffrey Howe and myself have been...
Even before the conference debate, George Younger was hawking his defence wares to a meeting of the pressure group Peace Through NATO. Like most Tories here, he thinks the party's been presented with a winning hand for the election.
It seems extraordinary to think that only a month ago I was wondering how it would be possible to ensure that defence would be a major subject at any forthcoming general election. I do not think that that is a problem which we now have.
But the Defence Secretary was keeping his main message for the full conference. He went in to listen first to unqualified enthusiasm for the party's commitment to the nuclear deterrent and American bases.
At this conference, and at this conference alone of our political parties, we can speak of minimum necessary defence requirements in the honest and straightforward way which has preserved us from a world war for more than 41 years. We can say that the United States, our greatest ally, is welcome here.
What morality is there in scrapping our defences but hiding behind the US nuclear guarantee? What morality is there in attacking the United States, who gave us the Marshall Aid after the Second World War, and who taxpayers' money pay for the defence that we enjoy?